Many music lovers imagine that musicians all live in one big friendly commune, like drinking tea together, hugging, exchanging symphony ideas like cookie recipes, which is true often. But in reality, quite often it's so hard to shake off a fact that artists are also eternal competitors, and very often they fight, politely or not, for limited things like concerts, fame, and audience love. And a few stories show this better than the fascinating, messy, almost friendship, not quite enemies relationship between Sergei Rachmaninoff and Alexander Scriabin. And by the way, I have a number of comprehensive courses, including Scriabin and Rachmaninoff works, as well as comprehensive technique rebuilding program. And as we approach Christmas, you can get any of my courses at a 50% discount before December 25. So check them out following the link in the description. Scriabin and Rachmaninoff first met as teenagers. Rachmaninoff lived in the house of his famously strict piano teacher, Zverev, and Scriabin came there 3 times a week for lessons. And by the way, for those of you who complain about modern competition standards, about people being too obsessed with quality and technique, that we have lost musicality because we try to play so perfectly, please read a biography of Rachmaninoff. And here you will learn how Zverev makes modern conservatories look like yoga retreats, because he demanded such an absolute perfection every day, and the only acceptable form of entertainment for his students was sight-reading orchestra scores or improvising for hands. And if a student played even slightly under the mark, for example, Rachmaninoff was horrified of playing even one wrong note to Zverev, because Zverev could explode with terrifying intensity. He did, however, introduce his students to fine cuisine, best alcohol, gypsy parties, but only on Sundays. The rest of the week, students had to survive an army-like schedule routine. Today, in a developed country like the United States, he would be sued instantly. But back then in Russia, well, today not much has changed there, but he could literally smash a vase against a student who didn't play well. Imagine that happening at your next piano lesson. Later, both composers studied in the same composition class at the Conservatory, and here the fun begins. Rachmaninoff passed his fugue composition exam easily, partly thanks to luck and cheating, actually. Before the test, he overheard students who had already taken this test arguing loudly about the correct solution. Rachmaninoff listened to them, walked into the exam, and solved the puzzle flawlessly. Scriabin, meanwhile, as most of other students, struggled with the fugue exam and had to retake it the next semester. Then came the legendary moment. Rachmaninoff decided to finish Conservatory 1 year earlier than the curriculum allowed. No one had ever done this, but his mentor, Alexander Zloty, was leaving Russia, and Rachmaninoff thought it's unreasonable to stay for another year if he is losing his teacher. And also Rachmaninoff has had some health issues, so all things considered, he asked, and unbelievably, he got permission. He got this luxury and privilege. Scriabin found out and said, well, then I'll do that too. So he marched to his teacher, Arensky, who actually didn't appreciate Scriabin's talent in the first place, and requested the same privilege. Arensky's reaction? A very loud, very offended and outraged absolutely not. Scriabin took it personally. Very personally. He stopped attending composition classes by Arensky altogether and didn't even begin to write the required graduation piece, a 1-act opera. Rachmaninoff, for instance, wrote his opera in 17 days, and it was a tremendous success. Scriabin wrote nothing. So we get the beautifully ironic situation where one of the most significant composers of the entire century never actually obtained his composition degree. From there, the two men went in completely different artistic directions. Rachmaninoff stayed rooted in the Russian tradition with Tchaikovsky as his musical godfather. Scriabin sailed into unexplored harmonic galaxies full of mysticism, chromatic folk, and visionary experiments. At first, audiences viewed Scriabin with suspicion, while Rachmaninoff, after recovering from the disaster of his first symphony, enjoyed huge success with the public as a composer and actually as a pianist, although the funny thing is that he didn't actually identify himself as a concert pianist before he was 40. And I have a video about his second concerto and first symphony, Disaster, so check it out here. But then something shifted. More adventurous critics and open-minded music lovers began praising Scriabin as a prophet of the future, as a new voice of the art. Meanwhile, Rachmaninoff was increasingly labeled as old-fashioned. So they were in a paradoxical situation where Rachmaninoff would have a tremendous success among wider audiences and he would constantly play in a sold-out halls, and at the same time would be mocked in the critics severely, while Scriabin would play in a half-empty halls, struggling to get enough audience for his events, and nevertheless would have a very dedicated and very fierce closed circle of fans and very positive reviews. For example, critic and close friend of Scriabin, Sabaneyev, wrote that Rachmaninoff was merely one of many good musicians, while Scriabin was the unique representative of deeper and broader art. Critics even had really mean jokes. They said, Scriabin nov, which means new, Rachmaninov, which means not new. Very sophisticated game of words. Not surprisingly, all this didn't help them become close friends, of course. Opposite personalities, opposite artistic worlds, and critics constantly stirring drama around them. And yet, both composers behaved with remarkable nobility, at least in public, especially Rachmaninoff. When he returned from Dresden, one of the first works he conducted was Scriabin's First Symphony. Later, he even invited Scriabin to perform his own concerto with Rachmaninoff conducting. And imagine the sensation. The press had painted them as enemies for so long, and suddenly they appear on stage together, collaborating gracefully and peacefully. In private, however, Scriabin could be quite sharp, actually. He once called Prokofiev's music trash, and Rachmaninoff's music even better. He said it's boiled ham. But the greatest gesture came from Rachmaninoff after Scriabin's sudden death. He was devastated after attending Scriabin's funeral. He toured Russia then, performing all Scriabin programs, donating the income to Scriabin's widow. Provincial audiences, however, exhausted by Scriabin's modernism, would shout, "Maestro, play something of yours, play something different." And Rachmaninoff calmly replied in such cases, "Tonight, only Scriabin." And yet, Scriabin fans still didn't appreciate even this very noble gesture and attempt. And I actually can understand why, kind of, because here's the paradox of having a powerful personal style. When you have a musician so genius, so powerfully gifted as Scriabin or Rachmaninoff, they are so unique, they have such a strong personal style, and it becomes their biggest strength and at the same time their biggest weakness, because everything Rachmaninoff played sounded absolutely wonderful, but sounded like Rachmaninoff. We have one recording of him playing a Scriabin prelude. You listen for 3 seconds and immediately think, wow, this is wonderful, but this is definitely not Scriabin. This is Rachmaninoff wearing Scriabin's jacket, because he broadens the lines, smooths the dotted rhythms, and grounds the music with his noble singing approach, while Scriabin actually needs volatility, fire, risk, even at the cost of imperfection. For example, you would need to always sharpen the dotted rhythms in Scriabin, making music nervous, impatient. So a figure like pa-pa-pa-pam, you would play like pa-pa-pa-pam. And if it were Rachmaninoff, you would play pa-pa-pa-pam, something like that. So much milder very often, although, of course, there are some exceptions. But that's a general rule about style differences. And Scriabin's devotees attacked Rachmaninoff brutally in the press. But the best part, the same people who attacked Rachmaninoff came the next year asking Rachmaninoff to donate money to their Scriabin foundation, and Rachmaninoff politely reminded them of their reviews and sent them directly to hell. And that, my friends, is the real story of two giants, two rivals, two almost friends, navigating the complicated world of art, ego, critics, and ambition. Stay tuned for my upcoming release of 12 etudes by Scriabin and 9 etudes tableau by Rachmaninoff, and check out my courses by following the link in the description. My latest release are Scriabin etudes Opus 8 number 12, covering both existing versions of this etude, as well as Rachmaninoff's famous etude Opus 39 number 6. Thank you for watching this and see you next time.